So, everyone, welcome to the Paratrooper and Yogi weekly conversation with me and the legendary Shana Meyerson, host of the Yoga of War podcast, prolific Substacker, joining us all the way from Los Angeles, California, United States of America. Shana, here we are again.
Here we are again on opposite corners of the globe. Welcome, everybody, to the Paratrooper and Yogi Walk Into a Bar podcast. I just walked into this bar, and there he is, major reality check himself, Mr. Andrew Fox, co-host of the Brink Podcast, and Mr. Andrew Fox here on Substack and X. Today, we're going to be discussing his article that I hope every single one of you read twice. Will Trump strike Iran? Isn't that the $1 million question? So, Andrew, just as it looked like the U.S. was about to strike, as you noted, both strikes pulled back from the brink. I saw what you did there.
Yeah, very clever.
Very, very clever. You didn't make any mention of pulling back from the bar, but maybe in the next article.
That's because it rarely ever happens.
Yeah. So anyway, I do want to talk about the article, and we might as well start with the question, will Trump strike Iran? I know you and I agree on most points, though last night we had a few points of disagreement on WhatsApp. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. I do want to start by saying when it comes to the question, will Trump strike Iran? In my highly estimable opinion, in a word, yes. But you know that I have to keep talking because I like the yada yada. We're not going to stop at yes. So, Andrew, what you refer to as Trump's quote unquote wait and see approach, I would describe more like wait and see that he will destroy the IRGC when they least expect it. Here's the thing, though. Trump doesn't want forever wars, okay? I mean, if we're going to be honest, he doesn't want wars to last more than like a few hours. And when you have this one and done strategy, like he clearly does, it requires planning. And I think that maybe at first he thought it wouldn't require that much planning, and then reality struck. So to go in without strategy and strategic positioning, in the words of another famous U.S. president, it just wouldn't be prudent. Keep in mind that it took Israel 3 weeks to respond to the atrocities of October 7th. Of course, that is if you don't count their October 20th attack on the Al-Ali hospital. Obviously, I hope you guys know I'm joking. But not a single person questioned whether they would respond. In fact, they were accused of genocide before they responded, but I digress. This is not at this moment a question about Israel, but about America. And when Trump says that quote unquote help is on its way, I fully believe that help is on its way. The real issue is that the U.S. needs to mind the gap between the Iranian people's will to fight and their will to live. I think the protesters do believe that the U.S. is coming, and that is what's giving them the will to continue fighting in the first place. And I would just personally caution against drawing reactionary conclusions to last week's apparent withdrawal. The Islamists have a centuries-long anti-Western agenda and strategy we've talked about many times. We need to start thinking a lot longer term than we are than just days or even weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think Trump is going to strike. What he'll strike and what he'll achieve, I'm not sure about. Like, you don't shift that amount of assets to the Gulf if you're not going to do anything. Because
Exactly.
the only other reason you do it is for deterrence, and that time has passed. And it's a lot of asset to deter. And we've seen carriers shifted to after 7th October, we saw a second carrier group shifted to the Gulf, which sent a very clear message to Israel's enemies not to escalate. I think that was a major factor. In slowing things down in the aftermath of 7th of October. I think Hezbollah would have tried a lot harder had there not been another US carrier floating around the Med. But yeah, I mean, I'll go through my article. So let's start with last week. That was just a probe. It was clearly just a probe. So what you do is you send planes in, the enemy lights up their air defenses. You're watching how they respond. You're watching what the leadership do, where they go, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now you've mapped the enemy's neural network, and that's what it's done. So I'd imagine that an awful lot of electronic warfare assets are in the sky, like an EC3 or something similar. To scoop up all that information and start processing target packs. In the meantime, you've got fighter jets and bombers flying into the Gulf. You've got the carrier group that went through the Malacca Straits near Malaysia yesterday or the day before. So yeah, you don't shift that amount of asset if you're not going to do something. So the question is what? And there are three options on the table. You go for the decapitation strike. You kind of go for a reprisal strike against people that committed atrocities during the protests, or you literally declare war and you go for multi-day, multi-wave airstrikes and just take the whole thing apart, top to bottom. And actually, all of those things are on the table. There's nothing to stop America doing whatever they want. The Israeli Air Force laughed at Iranian air defenses. The Americans aren't going to have any trouble with them if the Israelis didn't. So all these options are on the table, and it's really comes down to what Trump wants to achieve. And my final point is that there's no guarantees of regime change, and also we know Trump doesn't like long, enduring campaigns. So I should imagine, if I was a betting man, you want to put money on it, I would say he's going to try and get the Ayatollah, get a few senior leaders, and it's kind of might end up a little bit Venezuela, where you just get a change at the top and you don't get any significant regime change down the bottom. And I disagree with you on one point. I think if you look at the protesters, I think they will feel utterly betrayed because look, yes, it takes time, yada yada, but like Trump didn't say that at the time. He said, we're locked and loaded. Help is coming. Like, keep going, keep going, keep going. And then 12,000 people are dead and 300,000 are wounded. Like, it was deeply, deeply irresponsible from Trump to say what he did. And that's the problem with social media, social media presidency. And I can imagine what happened is he said, right, do it. And the generals went, we can't. Our carriers in the Caribbean, you shifted it there so you could do your oil grab in Venezuela. It's going to take time for us to put everything back in place, and that slowed things down. And in the meantime, the Iranians were like, help's coming. Oh, actually, no, it's not. But it is in 3 weeks. Brilliant. Now there's shitloads of us dead and wounded. Cheers, Trump. So I think that might be counterproductive. My final point is that it might be counterproductive because if I'm Iranian, I'm looking very skeptically right now at any promises that come out of America, whether they're followed through on or not.
Mm-hmm. So I keep coming back, honestly, Andrew, every time I even look at this discussion, to that video of that older woman who said, I've been dead for 47 years. I have nothing to lose. And I think that, again, like armchair quarterbacking, which you can easily do from London to Indiana, and we could do from here to Iran. But the more that I hear the voices of the protesters, a few things come to mind. First of all, ultimately, I do believe that it's the Iranian people themselves that are going to have to overthrow the government. And they came this far. They have to finish the job, quite honestly, with or without Trump's help. This isn't just me. This is what people on the street are saying. It will be with. It's not on the timeline that you or I or them would like it to be, but they are continuing to fight. In your article, that nationwide protests now seem to be defeated by the regime's swift and brutal violence. I mean to emphasize that we have to keep in mind that with no internet and no phone, the only information that is going to come out completely unabated is going to be regime propaganda, which may come in a lot of forms. But if you watch some of these live streams that are coming out, and if you watch like Goldie, who's really not sleeping, there are still videos and messages coming out about ongoing protest. You don't think those protests are real now?
Look, no, you're getting propaganda on both sides. This has been an
Yes.
incredible propaganda war, like objectively looking at it. There is a very stiff push from UAE and Israeli affiliated accounts to drive these things on in the support for them, particularly in the West. Very emotional propaganda, and that you wouldn't be seeing it if they didn't want you to. There's propaganda on both sides here, so you can't dismiss the regime out of hand and then go, oh, but I saw this lady say this on the other. You've got to take them both with a degree of skepticism. And look, we are. You can follow the trackers. We are seeing a huge decline in those protests right now. And someone's made the really good point, which is like, how do the Iranian people seize power without weapons? And that's the real kicker here. That's why I don't think there will be.
Yeah.
Because so I don't think Trump. I mean, I'd be very surprised if Trump did multi-day, multi-wave airstrike after airstrike after airstrike after airstrike after airstrike. I'd be genuinely. I mean, if he does, great. But I'm here for it. Take the whole damn thing apart. But like, there's a million IRGC fanatics, and they are fanatics. They're not going to be bought off. They're not going to be persuaded. They want to die if they can. Like, you're not going to kill 1 million people, and that's the problem. Like, paying people to switch sides, it's barely going to happen because these people are religious lunatics.
Okay.
So regime change is exceptionally challenging right now.
I understand.
I think you just have to disengage emotion and say, like, I know what I want to happen, and your analysis, I think, is driven by what you want rather than what is practically possible.
Okay. First of all, I know that there's propaganda on both sides. In fact, I was having this conversation with one of our listeners, Ava Dunn, yesterday. We went for coffee, and I was talking about the propaganda that is actually coming from Goldie. I'm not talking about her words. I'm talking about that they're getting access to videos that are showing that the protests are still happening. And it's not just on hers. I mean, look at other channels. The protests are going on. But here's what I want to say really quickly about the 1 million strong, about the army, the military, etc. Because yes, the people are unarmed. This is a challenge. And the sanctions, we could keep turning the screw on soft power on sanctions, but the fact is that the sanctions only affect the people, not the regime, right? I mean, the Ayatollah is worth billions of dollars. He sends billions of dollars to his terrorist proxies, and he values his citizens at approximately $7 per person. So there's that. Meanwhile, they have no money, no water, no electricity, no internet, no freedom, no life, no choice but to fight for survival, even if it costs them their lives. We have to understand that when you have no life and nothing to live for, then protesting takes on a lot less existential threat because, again, they've already been dead for 47 years. But Andrew, I know that whenever I come up with my weird, optimistic theories, particularly weird because I'm not an optimist by nature when it comes to this conflict. Though last week, you certainly poked some holes in my theories, but I keep coming back to the Wizard of Oz, and I am expecting. Hold on.
The renowned geostrategic analyst.
That's right. Please allow me to quote this expert when I say that I am waiting for the flying monkeys to turn on the Wicked Witch once it seems safe to do so. Andrew, I mean, Pahlavi has started this what is it? Is it WhatsApp? Is it Telegram? Some sort of group where people can join him and voice their desire to be a part of this resistance movement associated specifically with him. According to him, there are thousands of IRGC who are joining in, who are flying monkeys. Some of them are flying, it would seem, but I do believe, we do know that some of them are refusing to fire on their own citizenry. That is something we know for a fact. And we got to keep in mind, no matter what you think about monkeys, they're still Iranians, okay? They have family, they have friends who are out in the streets. There is nobody in Iran at this point who does not have somebody who is either protesting or arrested or killed or maimed or injured or has a family member who has, much like Israel post October 7th. And the IRGC are people, like it or not. These monkeys, these flying monkeys, are people. And I do believe that there's a chance that they'll turn.
Okay. But look, the bottom line is, as you say, this needs to be citizen driven. And therefore, the airstrikes, in terms of military effect, have to be there to create the conditions for that to happen. So if it's going to happen, what you need to do is hit the IRGC hard enough that the people have a chance to get over on top of them, get hold of some weapons and actually do something. And that's the problem, is that tipping point is very hard to do. Because say you decapitate the regime, there's every chance the IRGC, some lower commander, could take over and start, continue the killing. Just, hey, I'm up, next man up, as it were. And that, it's incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult to do. I'm not saying it won't happen, but it is extremely, extremely difficult.
How has that next man up strategy worked for Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis? I mean,
incredibly well. It's been one of their greatest strengths throughout the campaign, is the fact that they've just had that next man up strategy. That's why decapitation hasn't really worked at all. Hezbollah, go on.
But Andrew, that assumes that everybody has the same strategic capabilities, intelligence, charisma as the person behind them. I mean, that's like saying...
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. You just need to keep things going. Do Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis all still exist? Are they still significant players in their respective areas? Yes. There you go. Next man up works.
Okay. So let me ask this, Andrew, because you're a bona fide genius. I say that for real, guys. I asked Andrew a question when we were together last week that I have asked hundreds, if not thousands, of people, and not a single person has come close to the right answer, and he got the right answer without even thinking about it. So that was my genius part, and he passed it. So, Andrew, bona fide genius. Anybody who wants to DM me, I'll ask you the question, and we'll see what the answer is. But you're not allowed to look on the internet. It's not a riddle or anything. It's just anyway, too much. Okay. So Andrew, by the kill off the top and the next person can take over strategy, is that to say that when the Hamasniks come after you, I could just take your place, and then your intern can take my place, and then their daughter could take their place because they're willing to, and then maybe their school teacher, and so there's something to be said for the person at the top has characteristics that the people who are 10, 20, 30 down beneath them do not have.
Yeah, but just because my point is that just because you're weakened doesn't mean that you're out of the game. And that's the point with the IRGC, is that you have to take them out of the game. And when you have a next man up, you can keep doing that, because you have to remember how compartmentalized this is as well. They've got 11 headquarters, and then five I think layers below each of the 11 headquarters. And so at every level they've got command. At every level they've got a devolution of power. It's very, very diluted. So you'd have to try and get this in every town, in every city, or you're just going to spark a civil war, which is frankly potentially worse than where we are now in some respects. It's good to get rid of Ayatollahs, not good people. Mullahs in Iran can frankly go and burn, as far as I'm concerned. But that doesn't mean that junior commanders at all levels can't take over, try and create their own fiefdoms. There's all kinds of different ways this could go, which is why regime change is so tricky, which is why it's... Has it gone right once? Can you think of one where it's gone right? There's Portugal, like
Germany,
the Middle East. Yeah, no,
Germany.
Can you think of one in the Middle East that's gone well?
Well, I mean, but I gave you one. Germany is the biggest regime change miracle in the history of the world.
No, it's not. But
no.
It was a war. It was a defeated war, and you changed. I mean, it's a very different beast to taking over a crazy religious theocracy. And
In
the problem that Arab countries in many cases have, and this is why it might be different in Iran, is that they are artificial polities.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at Libya, it was a minority ruling over a majority. If you look at Iraq, it was a minority ruling over a majority. If you look at Syria, it was a minority ruling over a majority. These all have the same characteristics. And when the leaders fell, because these weren't real countries, there were lines drawn on the map by the West, frankly, quite often Britain and France. They didn't have anything natural holding together. So it was natural then for them to fall into civil war and try and duke it out over those traditional tribal and ethnic lines. Whereas at least in Iran, you have a kind of Persian history rather than an Arab history. It's been a country for a very, very long time before the mullahs took over. There is a sort of sense of national history that countries in the Middle East generally haven't had. And therefore, you could say that there's a good chance that actually there might be that continuity that keeps them together when the regime gets decapitated. But there are also a number of ethnic groups. The Kurds, for example, will be pissed off right now after everything that's happening in Syria, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So they're going to be feisty right now and probably not super keen on any kind of continuity if the regime does fall. I mean, there's so many different ways this could go, and that regime change is just so risky for that reason.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'll also argue that there is mass support for Pahlavi, so this isn't just like an extra.
Well, hold on.
Support.
I'm skeptical.
Let me say my piece just for 1 second, and because did you hear his press conference last week where he laid out the actual structure that he's supporting for elections to?
Transition.
So this isn't just America coming in and saying we're going to install our preferred leader. In fact, looking at the first thing that I think I texted you after Maduro was I said, "Is this about Iran?" I think that was like the first sentence that I texted you, and that's how I always saw this. That this was like a threat to the Ayatollah. That you see what happened, you see where we found him. You're next, and quite frankly, the Mossad. I would not be surprised if they have secret cameras in the Ayatollah's underwear. I mean, I don't think this guy is going to be able to move an inch without them knowing exactly where he is. However, and I assume this is the however that's already ringing in your ears, is this whole Delcy Rodriguez thing. That for whatever reason, despite Maria Corina Machado giving Trump, oh my God, her Nobel Peace Prize. Don't get me started on that. But that wasn't enough for him to decide. Oh my God, for him to decide that bribe was worthy of him giving her the election that she won to take over her own country. Now, so he is keeping in Rodriguez because, he thinks that even though it's still regime, it still presents some level of stability, right? And if I can keep her under my thumb, she's going to make more sense. Now, I see him messaging the same things about Pahlavi as he's messaging about Machado. They're nice people, but I don't think they're going to be able to grow the balls to take the reins on this. And I 100% agree with you, Andrew, that in both instances there's a tremendous threat of civil war. I think that threat is going to be here regardless of regime change. Now, you noted in your article that, quote unquote, the regime survived Operation Midnight Hammer. I do want to note that the reason the regime survived it was because Trump called off Israel's final blow and deliberately kept Khamenei's snakehead on his body. Now, they didn't survive because of any sort of failing or shortcoming on the of the Israeli or the U.S. offensive. This was Trump's decision, and now when he's ready to finish the job will be finished. And quite honestly, if the Ayatollah and his regime survive, the citizens are going to have hell to pay. So it's going to create more protests because he is going to come down hard on his detractors.
Yeah, I mean, no huge disagreement. I think you're right. I think they'll know exactly where all of the regime headshed are right now. And like I said, that probe the other night would have absolutely been looking to see how the leaders reacted, where they went, what their safe locations are. Obviously, there might be a chance that it's under a mountain, which could make life quite difficult when it comes to striking them. Certainly, they put, was it 12 mops into Fordo and it's still operational? So, it's not a guarantee when you live under a mountain. It's like, Smaug in the Hobbit, sat on a pile of treasure under a mountain.
Right.
Very, very difficult. You have to draw them out, which is of course what they did with Smaug. And I didn't think of that Tolkien analogy before, but now I'm delighted with it.
It was quite delightful.
Yeah. So it's like I said, none of this is easy, and I think that's my key. That's my key. I agree with you. I think they're going to go for the head of the regime, but my cautionary note is it's not an easy thing to do, and there's a lot that could go wrong off the back of it if they don't have their ducks in a row.
I 100%, of course, agree. Again, this doesn't make for the best TV because we agree on basically
I agree
everything.
with you. Well, I also agree with you.
Okay.
I also agree with you.
Yeah. But actually, a question that I wasn't trying to interrupt you before when I was trying to interrupt you. What I was trying to do was ask a little bit of a maybe your expert opinion on this high stakes game of chicken. Keep in mind that in the June attacks, right? The reason why that went out without a glitch, and I think we need to not become complacent, is because in 2024, in April and October, Israel took out all of Iran's air defenses, basically. So they were able to just go in, do their thing, go out. America comes in, does their thing, goes in, goes out. No one gets hurt. Everyone's home in time for breakfast, as they like to say in Israel. Andrew, before we go into possible retaliatory responses from Iran after, it's so funny. The other picture comes in my head when I see these carriers moving across, these assets, the time, the money, the manpower, the effort. It reminds me of that cheerleader who's 9 months pregnant and is still jumping around like nothing to see here, just doing flips and dips. I think that we all know what's coming, but I'm concerned. So we know that when America started mobilizing assets last week, Iran very quickly closed their airspace, which means that it was detected, no action was taken. Okay, so I guess that my question to you is, and I read your article a few times, I don't think it was answered, but to what extent have they rebuilt their air defenses and detection? We know that that they've been working with China and also with Russia to rebuild these systems. So I'm wondering, first of all, are we going to have the same kind of easy in, easy out? Are we going to go in and knock out their air defenses as a preemptory strike to the strike? And I guess if everything is sort of back in working order for them and they shoot down an American plane, for example, will Trump be willing to de-escalate that, or is that going to really, really explode into a tremendous conflagration, otherwise known as a war?
I'll make a prediction. I don't often make predictions, but I'll make a prediction that they won't land a punch.
Okay.
Look, if Israel can do it, like American can. I mean, the Israeli Air Force are good, but they're not a patch on the military asset that the United States can bring to bear. Look, bottom line is Israel doesn't have an aircraft carrier. They had to fly a very, very long way. They had to refuel over Iraq. That was a long range mission for the Israeli Air Force. It's not the same if you've got a carrier sat off. It's a floating city that comes. And don't forget, carriers aren't just things on their own. They come with carrier strike groups and all the supporting ships. So that is the single most impressive strategic asset on the face of the earth, and America's got, I think, 11 of them. This is a whole new ball game with the Yanks. So this is going to be. It's not going to be a cakewalk. Of course, the Iranians will have tried to rebuild their air defenses. Of course, the Americans will have to suppress them. But I'd be genuinely really surprised if they managed to lay a glove on the US Air Force or the US Navy. I
guess the issue is just that Israel had taken out their defenses months in advance.
So when you do an air raid like that, you go with something called SEAD, SEAD, suppression of enemy air defenses. It's doctrinally part of how you do this. You wouldn't even think about it without doing that first. So there will be, and like I said the other night, they got that whole network fired up, and they now know where all of it, or certainly what all the capability are. Like you said, Iran closed their airspace. They took this really seriously. It looked like it was going to happen. So they will have reacted as they would in real life, if that makes sense. They would have gone through a genuine response rather than a kind of, we're not going to show everything right now. And even if they did hide a few things back, I still don't think, if they couldn't shoot down an Israeli aircraft, I'd be astonished if they managed to knock out a US one. There is the only flanker here is today China landed a bunch of transport aircraft in Tehran. So who knows what was on board of that? It could be rubber dog turds. It could be missile air defenses. We don't know.
Yes, probably rubber dog turds. That was the first thing that crossed my mind.
That was a good Morning Vietnam reference. I don't know if you've watched that Robin Williams classic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could be nothing. It could be some serious kit that might make a difference potentially. But of course, the Americans will have been tracking that. They're not going to just let. They're not going to go, oh, look at that, a bunch of Chinese aircraft. Oh, that's interesting. Right. Anyway, back to reading the match report of Indiana versus Miami last night. Isn't Fernando Mendoza amazing? They're not going to have done that. They'll be tracking all of this stuff. They'll know exactly what the Iranians have got coming in. I think this is the one thing I never understood about Make America Great Again. It's like, you're already the greatest country on the planet in terms of industry, in terms of economy, and in terms of military. Like, what's to be made great again? Like, what are you talking about? Like, the US military is the single greatest military force ever assembled in human history. And if they really want to have a crack at you, then there's nothing you can do about it, be that in Greenland or be that in Tehran. And it doesn't matter, even if NATO, look at Greenland, even if NATO had actually met all their spending commitments for the last 30 years, they still wouldn't be able to touch the Americans. America spends more on defense than the next 10 countries in the world combined. But that's the space we're operating in here. So, yeah, I don't think Iran stands a chance if Trump decides to really go for it. It's a cakewalk.
Okay, I don't want to get into a political discussion, but let me just make one quick point on Make America Great Again. And for everybody who thinks that I'm MAGA just because I support Israel strongly and what Trump has done to support Israel, I am not MAGA. I'm very far from MAGA. But I think that the real concept of Make America Great Again is a reaction to Obama, who started apologizing for America and saying that we sort of suck. And so I think that it was more of a psychological reminder of who we are and the best of who we are, because we, like the rest of the West, are heading down the wrong pathway. But when it comes to military, of course, we know that we are the top of the heap, so to speak. But I want to talk about, because I know that you want to get into Syria, and it's also quite important. It's also getting very overlooked in this news cycle because all eyes are on Iran. But first of all, I mean, going back to the question I posited before is you don't have to answer this the second, but would Iran even dare to shoot down an American plane, even if America is attacking them, because they're not stupid. They want to posture like they're not afraid of America. They're hiding behind mountains, under mountains.
You're already coming at them. I mean, what are you going to do? Come at them more? I mean,
Yeah.
we've both predicted that they're going to go for regime change and try and take out the Ayatollah. Like, what have you got to lose at that point? And that's my concern about Iran's missile stocks. And I really hope that, whilst all this shift of American hardware has been going on, that an uplift in air defense has gone into Israel, an uplift in air defense has gone into Saudi, an uplift in air defense has gone into UAE. Because I've said it before, if I'm the owner of a skyscraper in Abu Dhabi, I'm flapping, because that is a very shiny target for a wave of Iranian drones, firmly in range. And that, like I said, the escalatory risks if they get missiles off the ground is significant. So, and the Middle East is a big place. There's a lot of targets to hit if you're the regime and you're going down and you decide to fire a Parthian shot to try and take as many people with you as you can. There is, the Iranians aren't completely toothless, as we saw during the 12-day war. They got some big hits on Israel. But in terms of shooting down a military aircraft, it'd have to be incredible luck.
So I understand this last gasp concept, and of course this is something that everybody is talking about. But I want to talk a little bit more broadly, because I mean, you're talking about skyscrapers in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, but I want to be honest. Like, from my, as we know, very highly biased opinion and viewpoint, any attacks on U.S. assets, U.S. allies, are going to be nothing more than symbolic. I don't think that anybody, including Iran, wants to F with a crazy person, and Trump is that crazy person. They don't want to F with him. They don't want to know.
I'm sorry. I meant once the bombing campaign starts, once the American bombing campaign starts.
No, I know exactly what you mean. And I think that they proved in this game of chicken that they're not going to do anything preemptory. They're not that stupid. But here's the thing. Based on the June 12-day war, is that I think that Iran is going to send like a few missiles to U.S. bases or whatever, allied assets in the Middle East. America and its allies will shoot them down. They're going to emerge unscathed. This is what I think. And Iran is going to say they fought big bad America, and then they're going to unleash everything that they've got left on Israel. Iran knows that a strike on Israel, no matter how intense, will evoke a much more muted response from America than attack directly on American interests. And it will also get them zero response from the United Nations. That's a big plus. Nobody cares if Iran attacks Israel, but if they attack America, there's going to be some sort of hell to pay. So here's the thing.
Mate, if American jets are already in the air, they're already paying hell. Like, what have you got to lose? That's my point. If you're going down because America's dismantling your regime and killing your leaders, like, if I'm Iran, I'm just like, hey, what have I got to lose? Fire everything, go everywhere. Everyone gets a slice.
Because
why would you? I don't see how. Oh no, America might bomb me more when they're already bombing me. Is a line of thought that I'm missing something. I'm sorry, I'm really confused.
Yeah. I know that's your way of saying I'm going crazy again. Every single person, including you, has said that any attack is not going to ensure a regime change. So that's why. They don't believe they're going down, even if they believe this is their last-ditch attempt, they're going to hold on to whatever power. You're the one who just said that the regime is deep enough that even if the Ayatollah in certain levels are beheaded, that there's still going to be plenty to continue the regime. So if you blow your wad attacking America, I mean, that's not gonna play well for you in the end.
Well, okay, I kind of see where you're going. Okay.
Okay. So, I seek to be fair. So here's the thing. I wanna look at like this this impending attack that is going to, it's going to hit Israel. And here's the thing, it's like, so Trump literally told Bibi, I think it was last week, maybe it was the week before. As I say every week, I have like no concept of time anymore. It could have been an hour ago, but I know it was at least a week ago. That he said to Bibi that a massive attack is the price Israel is going to have to pay for the U.S. overthrowing the Iranian regime. Now, I just find this funny because at the same time, U.S. is like, yeah, but don't you dare try to attack us. Like it's so easy to say, hey, Israel, you're going to have to pay a big and heavy price. Just know that's sort of like what comes, with this deal. It was interesting to see that a couple days ago, it might have been yesterday, Israel apparently said the same, that we understand this is the price that's going to have to be paid. And they are expecting massive strikes from Iran for sure. Israel is also saying, in a quote that I saw last night or this morning, again, timeline, not my thing these days, that they're going to be able to handle what they said was 700 Iranian missiles. So I find that an oddly specific number, especially when they're saying that Iran is going to be doing more than the 300 and maybe up to 1,000. 700 seems like a nice number right in the middle of that. They're making this as a public statement, and I have to wonder if this is either an overstatement or an understatement of the truth. Because on one hand, Israel has now deployed its Iron Beam, which I assume is going to prove to be the next Israeli military miracle. And in conjunction with their broader defensive capabilities, plus support from the U.S. carrier group that has to get in place before anything happens, let us remind you, we are all praying for the best. But in this last gasp concept, what worries me even more than whatever, a salvo of 1,000 missiles or whatever, is if they use biological warheads or dirty bombs, which obviously have been, bandied about as a threat. And I do want to just take 1 second to note the absolute perversion of a world that accepts as a matter of course that an independent U.S. military strike on Iran will somehow justify heavy retaliation against the Jewish state.
Yeah, I mean, look, iron beam, as I understand it, is for the low level stuff. So it might be good against the drones, but for the ballistic missiles, you'll still need David's sling and arrow.
Which they have.
I'd imagine the factories have been working in overdrive because they came damn close to running out during the 12-day war. That became quite emotional, I suspect, in the Syria when they were looking at their missile stocks. That could have gone, if that war had gone on much longer, that could have been a real problem. And of course, Iran has been focusing on rebuilding those ballistic missiles. I was told in Israel that they estimate they're back to where they were before the 12-day war. So they've still got loads of missiles, and they're focusing on the solid fuel stuff that you can just launch rather than the liquid fuel stuff that takes a bit of time to warm up and you can still hit them when they're on the ground. So, missile comes up, starts heating up, you see that, you can hit it before it launches. The solid fuels can get launched a bit quicker. So yeah, there is a threat to Israel, but they know it's coming. The Air Force isn't going to be committed to bombing. It's going to be committed to defensive action. That's a good thing. I think Israel's probably in a stronger place than it was because you haven't got the concurrent activity going on in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Syria. I mean, I suspect that Lebanon's going to escalate. I'd be very surprised if it didn't. Hezbollah are still rearming. We're seeing targets struck every day. If there isn't a sort of a really big hit, I mean, and there's every chance it could be coordinated with this attack on Iran. If you have Iran getting smashed by the Americans and Hezbollah getting smashed by the Israelis, that logically, militarily makes a lot of sense for those two things to happen at once. Because Israel can focus on just one thing, and they don't have to keep spreading their resources as they have done for the last 2 years of conflict. So
Yeah.
that's a real possibility as well.
Well,
But Israel will be for it. We'll see how
I
it
do
goes.
believe that Israel is and has been on high alert with Hezbollah, particularly the last few weeks. In fact, when you and I were there, I'm like, I was expecting that Hezbollah or Iran would blow up while we were there. I mean, that was already on the radar. And there's nothing that, as genius of a human being as you are, Andrew Fox, there's nothing that you or I know about pending, potential attacks from Hezbollah that the IDF is not aware of. They're
Well,
on high alert.
it's not attacks. It's not attacks from Hezbollah. They're worried about. We're not at that point. So their whole strategy in Lebanon right now is to go for this forward defense, as I call it, where if you consider what a risk comprises, it comprises capability, opportunity, and intent. And they can't do anything about the intent. So what they're doing is removing the capability and they're removing the opportunity, making sure that opportunity never comes up again. So it'll be a capability focused strike. On the missile production factories, on the rocket stocks, on the leadership, on the command and control, just to make sure that you can have as much intent to hurt Israel as you want, but you're never going to have the opportunity, and now you don't have the capability anymore either. So that's what I suspect it'll look like if I were, a betting man.
Well, that's twice in one show that you've offered yourself up as a betting man. So I'm not going to.
Both times I said if I were a betting man.
And I'm not going to go.
Put a gun to my head, and those are the bets I'd make.
And I'm not going to go against you on that one. Okay, Andrew, I know that your time is always limited and I can always talk and talk and talk. Let's get into Syria. Enlighten us.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wrote a long article about this the other day on my Substack. I went into great depth about what's happening there right now, looking at the various axes around the region. But I'm really worried about Syria because what's happening in Rojava is really concerning. Rojava is the Kurdish area. The Turks really hate it because it's a Kurdish area on their borders. For a long time, they've been supporting attacks on them. The talks between Jolani and the Kurds collapsed. They want to bring the whole of Syria under Damascus control, and the Kurds have quite understandably been pushing back given Jolani's jihadist links. So Jolani has launched a campaign against them, a military campaign. There's some serious slaughter going on. We've already seen Al-Hols, the ISIS concentration camp. American special forces have had to deploy to secure it. I'm told from my sources in Syria, they're not being truthful about the numbers that have released. Apparently it's more like 1,500, not the low hundreds. Truly, truly bad people. And those attacks continue. And, thankfully the Americans are on the ground there, but that's a very fragile situation. And if it comes to the worst case scenario, you've then got a bunch of jihadis who can now rejoin Jolani's ranks, and you've got a Turkish-backed jihadi militia right on Israel's doorstep again. And I've said probably over a year ago now, my biggest concern after the fall of the Iranian Shia Ring of Fire was that nature abhors a vacuum, and that Turkey, funded by Qatar, would look to fill it with a kind of Muslim Brotherhood ring of steel in its place. And certainly in Syria, that looks very much like that's going to happen. And I think it just shows actually what a good move it was by the Israelis to reinforce that border, create that buffer zone, not only to help the Druze out, but also to create that space. Because when you stand on that high ground on the Golan and you look down across what was the Vale of Tid in the Yom Kippur War, you can see it's just a flat plain. It's a straight drive through into northern Israel. And if you didn't have that really heavily reinforced, then that's a huge vulnerability, particularly for those northern communities. So that looks like a very, very wise decision in hindsight. What looks like a really stupid decision is the West's decision to fully back Jolani. Now they had, I get both sides of this because you had to back someone. I had to back, you had to back somebody, and he's the guy in the chair, and who knows. But it's not looking great from where I'm sat right now. And Tom Barak today announced that the Kurds are essentially being abandoned. He said, their role as, the main force against ISIS is now redundant, and that sends a really bad message. That the Kurds might well be getting abandoned, and the videos coming out of there are absolutely brutal. If you see them on X with that sensitive content filter, don't watch. Horrific stuff.
Yeah.
Really, really vicious, psychotic ISIS jihadi brutality. It never went away. It's in government in Damascus right now, and that's a real problem. So I would be keeping a close eye on Syria. Nobody's talking about it, and we really ought to be.
Yeah. I want to say that Tom Barrack, everything that comes out of his mouth is semi-problematic. The other thing is that I do hope that that the lifting of sanctions that Trump did very, very prematurely. I do want to hope that those sanctions can snap back, so to speak, should Trump pull the trigger. And I hope that Trump is paying enough attention to this. I assume he is, but as we've said, everything is sort of being overshadowed by Iran right now. And, it's hard to keep 100% attention on two different things, right? So I hope now that 1,500 ISIS prisoners are now just loose in Syria. I mean, I think that probably the best solution to that would just be to give them a state.
I mean, that's always been the solution, hasn't it? But obviously, there's a few problems with that solution.
But
you're right. That's the dream solution, clearly.
Yeah, and I just have to say, no, I mean, all joking aside, you asked me last night if I've been watching the videos or if I've seen the videos, and I can't watch these videos after 10/7, and even just, again, as I said, just the shaving of the Druze guy's beard, already scarred me so much that I months later, I still can't get that humiliation out of my head. But I just have to say, it continues to confound me how the world does not understand that this insane brutality that keeps happening over and over on different stages across the Middle East, but also across the world, are all being perpetrated by the same exact people. And these are the people that people don't understand how ridiculous it is that they feel are worthy of defending outside of a Jerry Seinfeld concert. You didn't hear this?
The analogy is a bit lost on me. Sorry, that's.
Oh no, the pro-Hamas people have been protesting Jerry Seinfeld because, us, he's a genocidal baby killer. And it's just how lost these people are, that how can they not see that these massacres become more and more savage, more and more brutal? I mean, what we're seeing these days makes Daniel Pearl look like a birthday party, clown. Not him, but what happened to him. Nobody even, people are like, oh, beheading, whatever. What's the next headline? So the Islamists are like, how can we make this more brutal, more sensational, more savage, more barbaric? And the world's like, ho-hum. And so I just the world has got to wake up. Anywhere this is happening is one place too many. And if our radars don't automatically go up as soon as we see sensitive content coming out of another Islamist movement, then we are, again, this is that MAGA thing. We have got to become great again, not just as America, but as the world. And part of that is understanding evil when we look it in the eye. Now, I know what you're thinking, because Trump is this just Qatari keister kisser and this Turkish tonguer. He's all over the place with the Islamists. But ultimately, the people who are on the streets who are shouting for Hamas are primarily on the left, and they are primarily anti-Western. I have to assume, they don't even understand what they're standing for.
I mean, they don't. If you look at half the rallies in London, they couldn't point to it on a map. It's just emotional driven, propaganda driven ignorance in support of what I call the omni-cause. I think other people have coined that. I think maybe Brendan O'Neill coined that. I don't know who did, but the omni-cause, where you're just angry, got to be angry at something. What are we angry at today? We're angry at Israel. These people were protesting climate change once before that. Before that, it was BLM. There's always something they've got to be angry about. And it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what the cause is. They just got to be angry.
But it's not just the anti-Israel that's the problem. It's a problem. It's my big problem, but it's the pro-Hamas. It's the total lack of understanding that they are supporting the same people who blew up New York on 9/11. And
or maybe they're happy that 9/11 happened. There is that factor as well. Unfortunately, that's been one of the weirdest things the last 2 years, isn't it? Where that letter from Osama bin Laden, people shared it all over TikTok, and they were like, "Yeah, this makes a lot of sense." It's like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? Like the education system is failing our young people. It really is. There's so much ignorance. It blows my mind. But then again, lots of adults have it too. So yeah.
Well, I mean, the internet and now AI have programmed human beings to not think for themselves. And so when we lose the ability to critical think, we open our heads, take out our minds, and just allow the forces that are around us, many of which are evil, to just pour in whatever the hell they want. So we have been programmed to be brainwashed, and it's working. So that's exactly what's happening, and people have got to wake out of this stupor. We have a world full of zombies. Anyway, that being said, is there anything else that you could enlighten us about Syria? Because it has been overlooked. I know you just gave a great overview, but what should we be looking out for specifically right now when it comes to Syria and the Kurds?
So I would be tracking the advance of the Syrian army and seeing how quickly that Kurdish sort of defensive system gets pushed back. Do they hold the line? Do they suddenly start getting rolled up? If they start getting rolled up, then my goodness, the slaughter is going to be biblical. That could go so horrifically that I don't even want to think about it. So keep an eye on the progress. Also keep an eye on the kind of ceasefire not peace talks, but the talks between Damascus and the Kurds. They've come to a couple of deals that got broken within hours already, but who knows? Maybe they will negotiate some kind of end to the hostilities. But again, this is whenever I'm not making a prediction, because I think it's been very clear that Jelani's control over his people is not perhaps what we'd like it to be. Certainly with the Alawites on the coast, with the Druze down south. He either knows about it and condones it, or he doesn't have control over his people, and that's really dangerous. So there are jihadi psychopaths on the warpath. Let's see where they go. And Turkey as well, Turkish involvement. I think Turkey might, add. They might add air power. They might add fire support. They've certainly fired artillery rounds into there before. I'd be surprised if we saw Turkish ground troops, because Jelani's kind of got it in hand and he's firmly in bed with the Turkish now. So, I'd be more surprised if we saw that. Less surprised if we saw some kind of fire support from Turkey.
Does our fearless leader Keir Starmer have anything to say about this? I missed it if he did.
I don't think the UK's got a dog in this fight, quite frankly. We'll do airstrikes. We'll do airstrikes in eastern Syria, but this is America versus Turkey right now, and America seems to be withdrawing probably quicker than most of us would like, and just leaving it to Turkey, which is suboptimal. But the UK, we throw money at it, but we don't really have a kind of deep involvement in this in the way that the Americans and the Turkish do.
Okay. I will argue that the whole world has an interest in what goes on in the Middle East, but that's a discussion for another day that I brought up last week as well. And I do believe that instability in the Middle East causes instability in the world, and I don't believe this is only Trump's problem. But that being said, Mr. Andrew Fox, it's always amazing to connect.
Absolutely. And please, if you're watching this online, do the like thing, the comment thing, the subscribe thing. Let us know what you think and how we could do better, or what you really liked. That'd be really cool to see. And please, of course, give Shana a follow at the Yoga of War. Give me a follow on Substack, and And we do this every week, so we'd love to see you next time.
Yeah. And before we sign off, I do have to remind everyone, please put on your ribbons again if you took them off. We cannot we cannot forget Rangvili. He was supposed to be home 3.5 months ago. It's long overdue. He needs to be brought home to rest in peace, dignity, and the respect he deserves for being a hero of our people. Oh, and like, comment, and subscribe, and all the things. Andrew Fox, so good to see you again. Before we sign off, let me just say, l'chaim.
Go Hoosiers. Cheers. See you later.
See you next week.